Welcome to IT in Motion, where we make autonomous IT entertaining and informative. My name is Sun.
And I'm Josh. We're your hosts. Today we're talking to Santosh Jayaram, Chief Revenue Officer at CirrusLabs. Everybody give it up for Santosh.
Let's go! Welcome to the party, man. How you doing today?
All right, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here, gentlemen.
You're welcome. We appreciate you bringing the large crowd with you to applaud. They seem really enthusiastic about you.
Yeah, my entourage is always going to be with me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I come with a intense engineering background. You know, being a technology geek myself, growing up and doing this for the last 30 years. I have about 2 masters here. One was a core telecommunication and networking. I then went up and got myself a business degree a couple of years at Duke, and have done a couple of startups since. And this is my third foray into building another company, and we're building a pretty diverse company right now.
Exciting.
Excellent. Well, we're going to start with a little icebreaker game to get to know you.
Happy to. Yeah.
And you told us outside that you're into trivia.
Absolutely, yeah.
You tend to destroy at Trivial Pursuit and win all the money at the bar. So
100%, yeah.
So we're going to start off with some trivia questions. The Null Arbor Links is an 848-mile long or 1,365-kilometer long
Yes.
par 72 golf course, big enough you'd need a car or motorcycle to cross it.
Yes.
Where in the world is this golf course?
So before I give you the answer, I'm going to give you some history here, right?
Yeah.
I watched a series on Netflix. Well, maybe not even a series. It was a show, either on YouTube or Netflix, which walks you through every hole. So I've seen this end to end. Takes about 5 days, and it's one of the best things you can do if you're a golf aficionado, right? So this one's in Australia.
Yep.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know if he was going to get that. We almost didn't ask the question.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's interesting. They built that course
Yep.
as a way to keep like truckers and stuff on this long lonely stretch of road engaged and taking breaks and stuff like that.
Yep.
What was the only product that's Amazon sold at first?
Books.
Yes.
That's right.
That is correct.
There you go.
Sorry, the crowd was just so excited about that response.
Phew.
All right, who painted the Mona Lisa?
Da Vinci.
Yes.
That's right.
All right. We're on a roll here. Who created the Nobel Peace Prize, and what was he known for?
Nobel Peace Prize. It wasn't Gandhi for sure. No, I should have given it to him. The Nobel Peace Prize was created by somebody in Switzerland, I think.
I mean, his last name is...
Yeah, it's who it was named after. So
Alfred Nobel, then.
Correct. All right. And what was he known for? Do you know?
I'll
I'll give you a clue. I don't even know if that's the right sound.
No, something to do with the armory, a gun or a vaccine.
Dynamite.
Dynamite. Okay.
the inventor of dynamite.
It's dynamite.
TNT. Alfred Nobel. Okay.
That's right.
All right, in 2009, the first new character was added to Morse code since World War II. What was it?
It was dot.
So not necessarily, not dits and das, but the actual symbol it represented.
I have no clue about this
The
one.
@.
The @. Okay.
Yeah.
So that if you're
Okay.
sending radiograms, you can send email addresses.
No one @. Gotcha.
Yep. What organization, or what is the organization that took over running the internet after ARPA?
I know this one too. They're a US-based organization. Is it a governmental agency?
Yes.
Okay, so science-related will have to be NASA?
Close. It's the National Science Foundation.
NSF. Okay.
NSF.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Well, speaking of tech in general, I mean, you have quite the history in tech. You said 30 years plus, probably since you're curious about it. But can you give us a brief background, maybe more than brief, but extensive background of your career, how it's evolved over time and to where you are now?
Certainly. I'll start off with when I was a young kid, I always had a penchant for putting stuff together and stripping it apart, right? That's where my career with tech started, right? And I don't know if you know, when you open things and put up, those days they had something called as transformers inside the electronic things, and you always get shocked by it. That's how you learn how to put your fingers there. And as you know, so you never stuck your hand in a 440 volt after getting out 220. So you knew it. So it started there. I started assembling computers when I was in high school, selling it to my buddies, making a lot of money those days, selling computers and, of course, content to the computer.
In the black market.
The
Got
black
it.
market, yeah. Started there. It wasn't really black market. It was just all available stuff. You just had to know how to put stuff together.
Yeah.
And, of course, you sold it to your buddies. And that's where, you got the interest of really understanding how things work. So,
of course.
So for me, the philosophy has always been, you got to be passionate about what you learn and really understand how things work. So, I started dabbling, a lot with computers and electronics, and really understanding how the architecture works, how the crux of these things actually, when you put together, how they communicate with each other, and then hardware and software were evolving at the same time. And really getting down. So even today, my basics in hardware and software are very strong. So that when you give me a conceptual thing of what it is, it's easy for me to then go out and decipher what they're talking about. And as time went on, I joined. I came into the United States to do a master's program here. I started a job with Bell Atlantic, if you know the Bells of those days, which is now Verizon.
The heart of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. or the people that tap into your phone calls,
Right.
I think either one of them. I started doing socket programming with them, really getting to understand networks and, writing code for networks, and graduating to become a systems architect, doing a lot of fun stuff there. Was part of the team that did the first DSL push-up, launch in Texas, being part of the team, creating a lot of applications around there. Here is where I, learned a lot about infrastructure, DevOps, the whole 9 yards, good engineering practices, which again I always had, bringing that to bear to here, and then really getting into building, a couple of startups. So we did a couple of startups. Some of them did well, some of them not so much. But again, they're all wonderful learning experiences. Again, all technology-based startups. And if things had gone well as I had planned, we did a version of Airbnb in 2006 that we didn't launch.
No way.
So even before Airbnb was a thing, we had actually made. So, long story short, it's about being at the right place.
Right place, the right time. Yeah.
Being at the right place. I mean, there's, it's all about execution. But the good news is you get to learn that companies actually scale because of good execution.
Yeah.
It's not about great ideas. Everybody can come up with ideas, but it's all about execution. So that was a great learning experience. And then, of course, coming to CirrusLabs and helping CirrusLabs really grow in, the last 8 years has been tremendous. We took it from a really small company, getting it, to a good chunk. And now that we are on a roll, we're looking to grow it into the next realm of where we need to take it.
Right.
So it's exciting times.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So how is it that you transitioned from chief revenue officer? Right. That's a very sales, customer focused role.
Correct.
Your earlier days, it sounds like it was a lot of machine and infrastructure focus. So kind of how did that transition happen?
I realized at a very young age that I was a good salesman, even though I wasn't trained to be a salesman. Right. It's all about being genuine with your customer, having a conversation of why they would need it, or if they don't need it, not to push them on it, right? It's being genuine
with relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
an honest one.
An honest and being transparent and being genuine, making that connection, building the trust and relationship was something innate in myself. So it came naturally to me. It was also an observed thing that, hey, you're doing a good job of sales. Why wouldn't you take on the role? And I've always been, an evolution guy, right? So titles don't really matter at the end of the day. It's, like I said, execution. So even in our organizations, right, we only have titles for the outside world.
Right.
But internally, it's an open door
Just a part of the
policy.
team.
Anybody can come and talk to anybody, voice your opinions and things like that. And we always say, guys, do not use a chain of command over here. That's not how we operate. We're small enough to be flexible and do what we need to do. So titles really don't matter. Even though I have CRO, I could be the CTO if I wanted to. I could talk to the CTO and tell him why he's making a bad decision. The CTO can tell me why I'm making a bad decision.
Right.
So titles don't matter, but the reason why I'm here is because of my ability to be able to understand what the customer's needs are and really articulate that in a good fashion to them.
Seems like you were a part of that early DevOps generation too.
Right,
Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, we were doing DevOps before DevOps was even a word, right? We just called it systems engineering those days, right? Which was, and I would look at it, right? Starting at Verizon, almost 20 years ago, we would see this manual process for the billing and ordering start every morning. You had to crank up all the systems before the call center started. You would have to run health checks. You had to run sample transactions. And this were all 30 people sitting on a call and clicking buttons all day. And I'm sitting down there going, hey, in my sphere of influence, there are 10 things that I can do to automate this process. I don't need to, sit down and waste 30 minutes on this call. And I started automating process. I used to write shell scripts. Again, I don't want to really date myself as how old I am, but
shell scripts still run the whole world.
Still run the world. Yeah,
they haven't gone away.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the fastest way to get a response anyway. Yeah. So I started writing the scripts to automate a lot of these infrastructure, moving databases and things like that, checking, testing, and all these were scripted, right? And it was amazing to see. And some of the guys who knew they would lose their job if this was implemented going, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going to do it, irrespective. I feel like this would be a good place for us to be in. And, everybody got it. And that's how the genesis of DevOps, for me at least, started. And then going through the higher levels of DevOps from there on, really getting into testing. And really the genesis of DevOps really is that one click into production. We do that really well, and we understand why that could work really well too. And we've added so many tools into the mix, and ScienceLogic is an important part which sits on the observability monitoring piece of what we do.
Yeah.
So it's a very good integration into what we do into our DevOps, really ensuring at the end of the day, there are only a couple of reasons why we do DevOps, right? And I always ask organizations, the first question is, hey, we need DevOps. Why do you need DevOps? And if there's no answer, it's our job to educate them as to why they need, and there's different versions of it, and that's what we're good at.
Yeah, different versions, different best practices.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to zoom in on one thing you said there. Sure. You said, there's that one click to make things happen, or maybe even zero click for the right process, doing it right.
Yeah.
That really speaks to automation, right? So you talked a little bit about, 30 people doing a job that didn't really need to be done. They could be doing something else more productive.
Exactly.
What are some of the benefits of automation?
So, the biggest one is, the number of labor hours that you save if you're... people. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're a person that's sitting out there and you've hired this many people to do something that could be automated where you can use a better time. So that's one of the biggest things why companies do automation, right? And the second thing is, from a quality perspective, right, your quality improves over time with automation, mainly because you're looking at it and you're iterating over a period of time of how to make that automation better. So your eventual product quality also starts getting better. Now, automation is good for, you have an outage tomorrow, the mean time to recur, the MTTR as we call it in our thing, from an operational standpoint, you look at the benefits that it brings, or even better, is the ability to predict what's going to happen, which is what ScienceLogic does in some of the cases, and stop that outage from happening. Mm-hmm. Now, these are all very good benefits to have from a cost savings perspective. If you take a retail company, them having an outage for even 5 minutes is a loss of revenue.
Sure.
Yeah.
For certain federal government agencies, that's a fine for people that are working in telecom. Right? If Verizon messed up a certain access to a certain website, they would be fined by the FCC for something. So automation definitely helps in all these places, and again, humans cannot see beyond a certain range.
Yeah.
The correlation that comes out of different types of tools and what we can then put into automation, I think are all the benefits of automation at the end of the day. Is really making a very efficient, self-healing, self-correcting, self-working system at the end of the day.
Yeah. When people think of automation in general, a lot of times what they think is, oh, it's going to automate somebody's job. And there's that sense of fear that comes out in people. They're like, am I going to lose my job if my job gets automated? Is that real?
No, I think not at all. But I'll take that with a grain of salt, right? It's also going to be that person's mentality. If you're a person that always thinks gloom and doom and it's going to replace my job, of course it's going to affect you. But if you're smart enough and you're looking at it from the perspective of how do I reinvent myself, what's my next evolution, there is absolutely a way out. We were having this wonderful conversation the other day, right? We were sitting and talking to a few people that said, hey, tomorrow, humans are going to get really dumb because, AI is going to come in and take over. I'm like, no. 100 years ago, your grandparents were either on horses or walking, and it's not made us any dumber because we had started to drive cars or taking on technology. We evolve as long as we can understand, what that new evolution is going to be, how much of a benefit it's going to be to the human race. I think I look at it as, definitely a big benefit to anyone. Yeah.
I mean, you're going from doing these tasks that are automated, but you move on to being more proactive. So, these automations were initially to reduce MTTR. Now we put enough automations where now we can think about being proactive to what you talked about, right? It's reallocating your time towards it making the experience better in the first place.
100%, right? So, for me, and this is a responsibility for everybody, right? How do we make our customers' journey easy? It has, whether you're an engineer, whether you're a customer-facing salesperson, everybody has to think about how to make that customer's journey better. Yep. Now, let automation take care of what it does best. Let you as a human, because from my perspective, I've seen that the human interaction is very important. That's never going to go away. Machines are going to take over some part of it. And human interaction, which is missing today in today's business transactions, can again become a reality as high customer, because the way we can get what we call as customer intimacy or customer stickiness is with us being more intimate with the customer. So I think you can refocus parts of your job into what is customer intimacy.
That's true. It's like when you call up the pharmacy, right? And you get that. By the time you're calling the pharmacy, you've already tried the app and you can't do what you need to.
Yeah.
And they still make you go through this long menu till you finally talk to a person who can help you.
Yeah.
And right, then you finally have that direct interaction with a person who can understand you.
Absolutely. And you're craving for that part, right? So those
place.
things are not going to go away.
Yeah.
So, when you were at Verizon, I think is what you said. That's when you went through business school, and you've talked a little bit about that transition already into sales, but what else did business school sort of open your mind up to?
Oh, absolutely. I think it was my first experience working with 100 other people that were more brilliant than I. So you
to some capacity, not in the way that you were probably brilliant at the time.
I'm humble enough to accept that I met some of the smartest people over there, right? Because you're a young kid, right? You're 25, 26 when you're starting B school, and you're going with this real confidence because you think you're a hotshot, and you go there and you find 100 other people that are as smart or smarter than you. And I'll give you the best example, right? I take an accounting exam, the first week of this, and it's the first like a midterm or whatever it is, and I got a 96 out of 100, and I'm going, great, I feel really good about it, but I was in the 25th percentile.
Everybody else.
There were 75 other people that got 100 on it, right? So it's like absolute, they were just like breezing through it, and I saw people that could multitask while the lesson was going on. This guy was doing his work, and he was finishing the assignment while taking notes. I mean, and you might all these different types of talent, and then it kind of really opens up your eyes to, oh my God, take away all your biases, take away, I've seen this, when you look at a person as humans, we make a lot of assumptions, but for me this was an eye opener, like, hey, wait a minute, right? Like, you see this person, you may think when you're walking down the road, you've already been, but he's the CEO of this large corporation, and you're never going to know that until you get to know that person, right? And that was really wonderful. So kind of humbled me down, really helped me focus on saying, hey, almost like a retraining of myself, and then understanding how to work in the business world. Mm-hmm. And really gave me a lot of confidence, to approach on starting a business, right? Because as children, coming from an immigrant family, it was all about, hey, this is your domain. Don't try to get out of it. Save all your money for the rainy day.
Right.
Like, oh, shit, I can go out and invest. I can do this. I can do that, and I can grow. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience there for me.
So tell us a little bit about how that transition or eye-opening experience into the business, whereas you had more of the technical background.
Yep.
But when you got exposed to the business, how did the technology solve business problems? There's always that difference between within organizations, right?
No, it was because what it did help solidify it for me is why are we making certain decisions? When I was a pure technologist and the business teams made decisions and they were head scratchers, I never understood why they were making the decisions, right? And so now I had the ability to put 1+1 together. In this case, it's 100+100 together, right?
Sure.
Because you've got variables and you've got and it's a discussion between both the technologists and the business really to figure out how to make things better. But today, which is wonderful, is technology can solve almost anything. So all we need is a business problem, and we need to figure out how to solve that business problem, which is what the connection of those dots is what made me complete. And it's still a learning process. It's never done. You're always learning. You're never going to be a know-it-all. Be humble enough to take input from everybody, and then make your decision. So at the end of the day, the ball lies in your court. You have to make the final decision, but be humble enough to take everybody's input.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that's a lesson I learned early on in my career. As a technologist, you're like, hey, the technology does this, the business should adapt to that.
Right.
And you really don't want that.
Absolutely.
What you want is to adapt the technology to the needs of the business.
The needs of the business, yeah.
But that said, you also need to understand the limits of the technology, because it may be a small tweak to the business that changes your billion-dollar problem into $100 problem.
Exactly. And that's the bridging of that gap. And sometimes I've also seen this, right? The business may ask a question, and the technologist's response is never a straight response. If the technologist can give a beautiful business-like response, there would be like so much synergy between the two sides, that I've seen. But again, it's a learned talent. We always mentor some of our folks as an evolution of their career paths to do things like that.
Yeah.
It is the interesting thing, right? You sometimes have to do all this analysis. You want to show off all that analysis because all the thought that went into it is important to you, but the reader doesn't necessarily want all that.
Exactly.
You've got that view of both, right? The detailed analysis, the detailed technology, and the kind of business view, which tends to need a lot more succinct answers and a lot more final analysis. What are the sort of risks of focusing too much on the technology?
What you can do is over-engineer, right? When you put too much thought into just the technology and not what I would call as the customer experience, right? Which is, hey, why is Uber more successful, or why did my app that I wrote in 2004 on Airbnb not more successful? Because we really did not focus on the customer experience, right? So focus on the customer experience. Don't over-engineer. Give the customer exactly what they need. Don't give them anything better at that point in time. I'm not saying don't give them anything better, but don't try to give them more features than they're asking for at this point in time, right? Sometimes making it really simple and then getting the adoption is sometimes a better way to go rather than over-engineering. So that's one of the big risks that I see of putting too much technology in the forefront.
Yeah, making it better is an assumption that it's better.
Absolutely.
There's a strong parallel with the saying in programming, right? Yagni, you're gonna need it, right? Like when you go design a system, there's this temptation to say, well, in 3 years we might need to do this. So I'm going to build all this stuff around it. But you don't know what you're going to need in 3 years, and so you're wasting time. You're making the system more complicated. There's a really strong parallel between that and giving the customer exactly what they need now.
And that's why agility works really well, right? You take your agile processes and build for what? Because businesses change, customers' needs change. So don't build products that, like you said, 3 years down the line that you think will be a fit, because, the landscape may have changed in 3 years from now. Build it for what the customers need now.
So in reverse, what are the risks of focusing too much on the technology? How about the other side?
Yeah.
What are the risks of focusing too much on the business and making money?
I wouldn't say that's a problem, but I always say focus on the money because, no.
You're the CRO, you have to say that.
We have to say that. Make the money roll in. No, focusing too much on the business also creates this, right? Suddenly your backlog is going to be really large of features that your customer need. And do you even have enough technology to support what the customers need? So a prioritization within the business parlance is like what would be, take the 80-20 rule, or take one of the analysis that you can do for your customers that says, hey, this is all we can do from the business side, and this will solve 90% of your problems. So don't focus on the outliers. Don't focus on this. I mean, of course, we're going to get to it, but why don't we focus on 90% completion of the product, because that serves all your customers. Right there.
Yeah, and there's another component that I've seen. I mean, like the idea of selling dreams, as I put it. It's like, if you're not selling something that's on the shelf right now, you shouldn't be selling it. You shouldn't be talking about it.
Try telling a sales guy that he's always going to sell the pie. This guy coming back to the technology my CTO going, I don't know what the heck you guys talked about, right?
Yeah,
that happens not all the time, but there are times like you're going to get an overzealous salesperson going out there and promising the world, and that's the other problem, right? Like over promising, and then coming back. Of course, yes, you do end up finding solutions, but it's some of them are tenable, some of them not.
Well, it also has this ricochet effect. At some point, you'd made some promises, and then you have to deliver some to close that business. And then it shifts the whole priority for all of product and engineering.
Absolutely.
And that whole ricochet is just
it is
money.
And that's why the way sometimes you develop your architectures are so important, right? If you've gotten flexible architecture that can take on these things rather than a rigid monolithic architecture, it's always going to be hard to work with those things. So yes, and that's why that initial design is going to be so important.
Yeah, I think one other side of focusing too much on say the financial side of it is going back to what you're saying about kind of that customer service experience.
Right.
I forget the exact term you used.
Yeah.
But also in like physical products get produced, sometimes it ends up where you focus so much on cutting costs and growing top line revenue,
absolutely,
that you end up degrading the experience that customers have, and it's a long term hit to the business.
Yes, agreed. And that's why I say always focus on every angle on your customer experience. The money will come.
Yeah,
that's been our philosophy. Don't cut corners anywhere, like including things, right? And you don't realize how important smaller things are, right? Like, hey, how do we do invoicing to our customers? How do we get them to sign a certain document? Does it have to be 30 pages long versus 1 page long?
Right.
Like these are all some of the smaller things that you can do to really improve that customer. So everybody has a part to play in that. I think improving the customer experience. Yeah.
You don't want to give customers too much homework.
Too much homework.
No one wants extra homework.
Yeah, make their life easy. All day.
So sometimes those sorts of risks, whether it's the customer service risk we're talking about, the customer experience risk, or technology or business risks, get lost in translation between different parts of the business. Right? You were talking about that with sales going out and promising a thing, and then it throws off product or engineering's plans, and you end up servicing 5% of the customers instead of 90% of the customers.
Yes.
Why does that happen? What do you do about that?
So I've seen this problem is a lack of communication. So you can have tons of paperwork, nobody reads. You must realize all of us have short, what I call as alligator memory these days, right? Nobody has the patience to read because you're constantly hit
I blame
by,
TikTok.
Exactly, or something like that, right? And even the dings on your phone are a distraction every day, right? They take away from a lot of things we focus on. So sometimes it's a simple conversation, and I harp this even with my own teams, like saying, hey, have you set the expectations right with your customer? And this is why I don't think AI is going to take our lives away. It's because you still have the human interaction. You still need a person sitting down with your customer, telling them, hey, do we agree we're going to build it this way? This is how the final thing is going to look like. Hey, it's delayed because of this reason. Emails and any sort of notification, project reports, status reports, really, they have their place of value, but they're not what human communication, human experiences can do to the overall experience. And that's why, to answer your question, the problem do stem from a lack of communication is what we've seen.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you personally deal with that in your organization.
Absolutely.
Through
all day.
well, not just that, but you talked about, right, you don't believe in at least in the size organization you have now, chain of command being the most important thing. Absolutely. It's about that direct communication. And so
100%.
You deal with it personally, but you make sure everyone's dealing with it.
Yeah. And sometimes, right, it's just that shaking of hands between two people that go a long way in building that trust and, building that relationship. So I'm like, why would you do this? And funny thing is, I get 300, 400 emails every day. So tell my entire team, you want something, call me, it'll get done. do not send me an email because there's so much going on in there.
It's also a lot faster to just pick
up the phone. And I don't understand that people still would like to send you a message or an email and not get you direct contact.
It's kind of like that even with Chatter and stuff. I mean, like people think, oh no, just Slack me. Like, no. Let's hash this out. What could be, this long all day conversation on Slack.
Absolutely. Could be solved in 5 minutes in a personal interaction.
So, you're one of the few business guys, and I say business guys in quotations because you're not really in your organization right now, with a bunch of these other technical founders and just teammates, right? How do you navigate that? Because
so like I said,
different role.
Most of the leadership in a team are similar personalities, similar backgrounds. Like we exchange roles all the time, right? So
very fluid. Okay.
Yeah, very fluid. So it actually works well. Like, hey, we rotate positions sometimes within the organization. So we always hear this from some of our folks in the office, like, what the heck are you guys doing? Like, you're always changing your roles. I'm like, hey, but
do they ever confuse you guys?
No.
Do you ever have hats and just literally like, I'm going to take the CTO hat and wear it today so people know?
We do that all the time.
You should literally have the different roles.
Like the stick they give you while you got to talk.
Yeah,
I've got the CTO stick now.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yes, one of the reasons we can work as a team is because of how, even though we're all different, the core DNA is pretty much the same within the organization for at least the leadership team.
You're lucky. Consider yourself lucky. Awesome. Well, hey, Santosh, it's been such a pleasure having you on this episode.
Great.
Awesome.
If our audience or guests would like to learn a little bit more about you, where can they learn more about you and how to get in contact?
No, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn. So if you look at the sad or sorry part is, I don't spend way too much time on my social media other than LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a good way to get in touch with me. Email me, and all my contact information is right there, so you can get in touch with me anytime. Anybody has any questions or would like to be mentored? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Don't tempt me, man. I'll do it.
Do it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, everybody, give it up for Santosh one more time.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful rest of your day, folks.
Hey, okay.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in your favorite podcast app. We're available on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and many other platforms. We release episodes on a regular basis. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to ScienceLogic.com/podcast.